My first question is, I was very appealing of Mr. Castro. First of all, I represent Southern California, and several of your sites are in my district, so welcome to Washington. One of our major issues regarding these recycling programs is the cost. California is the only state, as you mentioned, sir, with a consumer fee to pay for recycling. Almost all other states have a manufacturer take the responsibility for the recycling cost. Which ones of these models would you recommend would be best? And this question is for both Ms. Dennis and I think Mr. Williams. My question is on the advanced recovery fee in California.
Thank you for your question. In our experience with the model in California and the models that have been developed in other states, we find that where the manufacturers are more directly involved in the recycling processes, as they are in other parts of the world, the systems become more efficient. We are much more tied to actually doing the recycling ourselves or having it done on our behalf. I'm sure Mr. Smith would agree that the more we're involved in the recycling, the more we're motivated to find alternatives to some of the materials of concern that are in the products. The system in California has proved to be somewhat inefficient. There is a need for an increase in the fees that was discussed at a meeting earlier this week, and increasing those fees from a range of $6 to $10 to a range of $10 to $30. And we see that as a burden on current consumers that is really going to pay for the waste of former consumers. And so we're much more in favor of the producer responsibility systems that we're seeing develop in other states.
Well, Ms. Dennis, according to your testimony, HP, your only your recycling rate for 2007 was 15%. So it sounds like to me you could use a little help. So wouldn't you think maybe a combination of the two, maybe a fee that the consumer pays directly, and then also a portion that you are involved with? Because 15% isn't satisfactory.
Well, so the 15% is predicated on one very important factor, and that is the behavior of the consumer. The California system also does not provide neither system provides direct incentives to the customers to recycle the electronics. So we do recycle everything customers want to give us. Another important fact to note is that none of the recycling that takes place in California is counted in that 15% number, because we don't do the recycling ourselves. It's handled by state agencies. So we can't count that. The 15% reflects only what we do ourselves, which again is what we're seeing in the states that have legislation emerging. The first of those actually took effect in a large scale in Minnesota this year. So you'll see that number go up.
Ms. Dennis, maybe I'm not clear. What I thought you said in your answer to the advanced recovery fee was that it would be better served if you were more engaged and involved. And then when I reference the area that you are engaged and involved, it's only 15% of what you're saying, your role of what you're doing. So what would you, let me ask it in a different way. What would you do to suggest of how we could increase that number or increase consumer education to assist you?
So I think one thing that's important is to educate the consumer about the need to recycle these products when they're done with them. We find that they're often stored for long periods of time before they enter into the recycling system. And when we have events, much like the one that you had here last weekend, there's overwhelming demand for this service. So people show up with a lot of things to recycle, but they often don't know that systems exist. We manufacturers often advertise this fact as part of our new sales, but there is a lack of understanding in the sort of the general population that they have a responsibility to start these products on the way to the appropriate recycling solution. There also are states where these products can still be landfilled, and so in many cases those products escape what we think of as the kinds of systems that we put in place.
And Mr. Williams, what's your thought on the advanced recovery fee? And I'm down to my last minute.
Yes, ma'am. In terms of the advanced recovery fee, in the past we have supported that, but since then, as you can tell from my testimony, we believe in producer responsibility. We make it, we'll take it back, we'll take responsibility for the product. That being said, the issue with advanced recovery fees is the money being collected to address legacy issues, manufacturers have gone out of business, or the current players in the marketplace. Moreover, with advanced recovery fees, not all state governments are fiscally responsible. The money may be collected on the sale of a television, but if it goes into the general fund, we don't know where that money is going to be 10 or 15 years from now when we may need it. That's where we think federal legislation in this area is essential. I should say, moreover, not only should the producer take responsibility, but other stakeholders have to be involved to make this successful. We need the retailers to be involved and have a stake in this outcome, as well as consumer education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.